Namaste, everyone. I welcome you all to today's Yes Talk. The topic today is deconstruction of mandala art. And with us, we have our guest speaker today, a bright young mind, Suhani Mukherjee. I would like to share a quick introduction about her. Suhani Mukherjee is a 16-year-old high school student currently completing grade 12. She studied at the Mothers International School till class 8. Suhani is a self-taught artist and has been practicing mandala art for 5 years. Over the last few years, she has had the fulfilling opportunity to teach over 150 students the practice of drawing mandalas by deconstructing them through student-led NGOs and individual teaching sessions. She guides students as they unravel the techniques and nurtures their own unique style in this expressive medium. We welcome you, Suhani. Thanks a lot for joining us today and looking forward to having a very interesting session with you today. Over to you.
Thank you, Arnima Didi. Thank you for the introduction. Namaste to everyone here. I would first like to extend my gratitude to the Yes Talks platform and, of course, Bijlani sir for giving me this opportunity to speak today. Is it okay if I present my screen?
Sure. Yeah, I made you the co-host, so you'll be able to share the screen.
Thank you. So I would first like to start by saying that I believe the deconstruction of a concept or a process, especially that of mandala art, it's crucial in enabling its reconstruction. So before you can start drawing it, you must learn to pick it apart and understand each facet of this art form, which is why the name and the theme of this talk centers around the deconstruction of mandala art. I would first like to walk through the cultural and historic underpinnings of this aesthetic form, and by the end of this talk, deconstruct some of my own designs so that I can guide you through this very therapeutic art form so that you may be able to draw it for yourself. So, what is mandala art? In Sanskrit, the word mandala literally translates to circle. In traditional contexts, it is a geometric pattern or a design that symbolizes the universe or gods in different celestial realms. And the idea behind creating mandalas is to find serenity in the symmetry of both the design and the cosmos. A brief history on mandala art is Siddhartha Gautama, also known as the Buddha, was born in the region of Nepal around 560 BC, and he left his royal life to seek enlightenment through meditation and thoughtful action, which you all must know about. He preached his philosophy through India and established his first community of monks known as the Sangha. And these monks traveled through the Silk Road and so that they were able to spread Buddhism through other parts of Asia. And they brought the theme of practicing and creating mandalas with them. These spiritual compositions were used by Buddhists, and they can also be seen in Hinduism and other religious practices. For the religious symbolism of mandala art, the images of mandalas have been used by different cultures around the world in many different time periods, as well as the present. And its meaning and its purpose varies depending on the individual that's creating and observing this image. However, in general, mandalas serve the purpose of centering an individual on, say, a given narrative in order to encourage introspection and awareness of one's place and their purpose in the world, which ultimately leads to a peace of mind. In particular, within Hinduism and Buddhism, the belief is that By entering the mandala and proceeding towards its center, one is guided through the cosmic process of transforming the universe from one of suffering to one of joy and happiness. In Buddhism, mandalas are Buddhist devotional images that are deemed as symbols of the ideal universe. They come in many forms and they are painted on scrolls and taken along travels from the ancient times. For centuries, Tibetan Buddhist monks have made these cosmic diagrams out of colored sand, as can be seen in these pictures. As they place each grain of sand intentionally using metal funnels and sticks, monks enter this state of flow. And as they approach the center point of this artwork, they experience the transcendence of self and the reality of a universe in which all beings are free from suffering. Then, once they create these images, after days or maybe even weeks of labor, they practice non attachment and demonstrate the impertinence of all of these things by destroying the mandala once this beautiful pattern has been created. For me, mandalas represent the circle of life. The symmetry of these floral umbis that are drawn within concentric circles with the use of these radiant colors evoke a transcendence of consciousness as the full composition as it comes together hypnotizes its audience and its viewer. For me, the act of creating these intricate designs is a meditative ritual. It serves as an anchor for me, it helps ground me. I would like to introduce some of my own works before I can start deconstructing. These are some of my recent works. The first one being dependency, since for me mandalas represent the circle of life as well. Creating a quarter or a three-fourth of a mandala and attaching it to its whole is a way of showing dependency, whereas creating a whole completed design represents stability. I also use different colors, for example, in the third drawing, with the use of brown and black, creating a boundary between them. I sincerely apologize for the technical issues. So once a mandala, the basic pattern, is deconstructed, it comes down to four main components. There is the base layer, which is broken down in this diagram on the left. There is the simple shape, the more complicated motif, and the filler element. And with these four components, each layer of the mandala is created. And once it is put together, it creates a beautiful and intricate circular design. These are some of the basic shapes that are used in creating mandalas. When I first started with mandala art, I started with floral patterns, and one of my relatives saw my art and they asked me if it was the mandala art form, which I had not known about till then. But through research, I studied the works of different artists and came up with my own sort of concoction of how I can create these designs. And this is what it's broken down to. Thank you, sir. To summarize what I've said, mandalas represent the circle of life. The full composition is very powerful and meditative and therapeutic. I have many resources so that can help somebody teach themselves how to draw mandalas, and I would love to offer them to the Yes Talks platform to upload them. I'm now open for any questions if anybody would like to ask.
One interesting point that you made was that you created mandala art without knowing that it was mandala. That
Yes,
actually is
sir.
very creditable because this shows that of you rediscovered something, got the experiential sort of aspect of it without actually knowing what you were doing.
Yes, sir.
So that was really remarkable.
Thank you, sir. I think maybe unconsciously I would have seen that this art form somewhere and maybe picked it up, but I just hadn't realized it then.
Yes, but so many have seen it, but not everybody takes to it the way you did. And also, it's very time consuming. I'm sure it needs a lot of patience. Even before you get the meditative experience, you learn to be patient
Yes, sir.
and perseverant.
Absolutely. Each work ranges from 5 to 50 hours. It definitely does teach patience.
Hello, Suhani. Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
So my question, Suhani, is how do you differentiate different mandala art forms? Because to a layman like me, they often look the same, but you had some very good concepts of dependency, spiritualism, etc. So for a common man, do you have any guidance on how to interpret this from different artists?
Different mandalas have different, they have differentiating elements. For example, Celtic mandalas have a lot of interconnected shapes, whereas Buddhist mandalas will not be restricted to just circles. They have squares as the outline, as the base shape, which changes the way it looks. There are also different color schemes. For example, in Indian mandala art, they use a lot of bright colors, whereas in the modern interpretations of mandala art, many of them are just drawn in black and white in order to accentuate the intricacies of the design. So that can help differentiate between the different forms of mandala art. But at the end, I think it comes down to the style that you resonate with, the style that puts you in a meditative state when you look at it, when you look through it. That's what I think.
Thank you.
So, Hani, when you create a mandala, you probably start with an idea that I want to depict dependency. So you have the scheme in your mind and then you start giving it an expression. But if you didn't tell us that this is dependency, probably somebody else might interpret it differently, isn't it?
Yes, sir. The reason why I don't usually speak about the themes of the mandalas that I've drawn is because I want to encourage different interpretations of this artwork. You should take what you resonate with, but to share my own experiences, I had to put a name to these designs.
I have with me one more person who wants to ask you a question.
Oh, absolutely.
Vidya.
Hi, Suhani. Your mandalas are beautiful. I'm awestruck, honestly. So I just wanted to know, how did you go about learning them, or what was your journey of becoming a mandala artist? If you could share that. And question number two is, what is your experience of teaching this to others? Because it's such a delicate art form. So if you could just share a bit on both.
Sure.
So, as I mentioned, I had started with just creating floral designs that would take this circular form. And when my relative pointed out that it looked like mandala art, I delved into research from different artists. And I picked out certain, you can say, common factors between all of these mandalas. The main one being obviously the circles. And then I started deconstructing each pattern to see what I found the most beauty in, or what what I enjoyed drawing. And that's how I deconstructed it to create sort of my own designs. When I had the opportunity to teach with the student led NGO named Pain for Change, it's based in India, and they collect funds to provide art supplies to underprivileged children to support their talent. So I got the opportunity to have 150 students in one Zoom class during COVID. And it was a mix of people, middle school students, high school students, and I had a lot of senior citizens as well. So everyone is learning at a different pace, everyone is understanding differently. And so I had to accommodate with everybody, changing the speed of teaching, providing the content so that it's digestible and understandable for everybody. That was definitely a challenge. But at the end of it, when everyone was able to create their own designs, deconstructed by themselves, understand what it meant to themselves, and when they were having these beautiful experiences, I thought that everything was worth it. But yes, it was a very slow process, but a very beautiful one.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to know, Suhani, for a long time I wanted to know that is there any connection with this mandala art with Muslim culture or religion? Because you made those arches. Wherever in Muslim constructions or buildings, I see these arches. Arches. I mean, you understand that?
Yes. Mandala art has symbolisms in almost every Asian culture. So if you compare a piece of mandala art with Islamic art, you will find very similar patterns where they repeat patterns, they use the arches, the circles. A lot of the elements are the same. And so you can say that it's linked in a way, but they're also very different at the same time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Suhani, so when you emphasized its origin in the Sanghas, the Buddhist monks, it probably just means that that was the beginning, that is perhaps the oldest, but then it has sort of percolated to many other cultures, particularly those who were spiritually inclined. They found in it the same sort of possibility of expressing their deepest experiences and emotions through this art form.
I think the exact origins of this art I still don't know, but from what I found to be the oldest was when it was used by the Buddhist monks through the Silk Route.
Any evidence of something similar being there even before the advent of Buddhism, say during the Vedic times?
I haven't been able to find anything through my research. I think Google is very limited in terms of that. But I'm sure if I was to delve into Indian historic scriptures, I would be able to find something, definitely, since it's such an ancient art form.
Yes, I'm sure there would be, even if there are no records, because the human nature being what it is, uh, just as, I mean, the three basic elements on the spiritual path of knowledge, action, and devotion find an expression in just about every uh, religious and spiritual tradition. This mode of expression would also find some expression there. There's a beautiful book by Aldous Huxley the perennial philosophy, where he has shown that the spiritual experiences uh, of the seekers in different traditions, be it the rishis of the Hindu tradition, or the Sufis of the Islamic tradition, or the mystics of the Judaic and Christian traditions, the spiritual experiences have not only been similar, the verbal expression they have given has also been remarkably similar. So probably it would apply also to the art forms. Sometimes we don't have enough documentation available, but one can sort of imagine. But anyway, Buddhism itself is quite old enough, more than 2,500 years. And
Yes, sir.
then following that, it has percolated to many other traditions. That itself shows that these seekers tend to uh, somehow stumble upon the way you yourself did, even without knowing it. I'm sure many others have also done it. So precedence does have a value, but at the same time, the one who does it for the first time without knowing it is rediscovering it. And just because the person didn't do it as early as somebody else did does not mean that it is any less meritorious. Deserves the same appreciation as well as in the same sort of credit for giving it that type of an expression, which then is picked up by many more. But then the one who does it originally without knowing what the person is doing, without having got that idea from elsewhere, is doing it on one's own, which is really significant. And it doesn't matter when the person did it 2,500 years ago, or did it only 5 or 10 years ago, the way you did.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Arunima,
Thank you,
Vidya
Suhani.
wants to make some more observations.
Just a small observation and sharing, and I would like you to kind of reflect on it if you can. So, when you showed those mandalas of dependency, stability, and boundaries, it somehow reflected the cycle of life wherein initially the child is dependent and then becomes a stable adult and then grows into their own family and then comes back to nurturing his parents when they are senior citizens and so on and so forth. It just occurred to me and I just thought I'd share it and see if there is any connect with what you thought of.
Um, that mandala was actually made on the relationship between me and my brother and my mom. So that's a very accurate interpretation of that piece.
Thank you. And when you say it's life transforming as you move to the center, can you elaborate that a bit? Because that was a very beautiful statement that you made. That the whole point of getting to the center of the mandala is the life transforming experience.
The intricacy with which the mandalas are drawn kind of come to a stop at the center, where the center is either filled with a solid color or it's empty. But it's like the end point of that mandala. And so for me, I think moving towards the center while moving through each pattern, for me, I find it to be a beautiful sort of experience. Yeah.
Anything you want to share how your emotions shift? Because I think that's the learning that I'm seeking, to understand how it actually has an impact on mental health and overall well being. Because mandala is being used a lot as therapy also.
Actually, there are certain feelings that I can't exactly describe at the ripe age of 16, but all I can say it's a moving experience to draw it, continue drawing it, being able to teach it, and being able to continue learning more about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And wish you the very best.
Thank you.
You're still very young and you have a long way to go. And I'm sure you will.
Thank you, sir.
I think there's a question from Meenu.
There's a question. Yeah. Suhani, I can read it out for you.
I'm sure.
Have you ever had a creativity block while drawing? If so, where do you seek inspiration from?
My personal opinion on creativity blocks is that it comes from this constant pursuit of perfection within your art. Because how can your creativity be blocked? You're trying to create a perfect image and you're not able to create that. That scares you when it kind of restricts you from making more art. That's what I think a creativity block is. So I find it very important to create pieces of art which are imperfect, which are not the best, which you may not be proud of. You don't have to show them to people, but it's important to keep creating. And that way, I think a creativity block is definitely avoidable. Inspiration is definitely all around us. Inspiration from my motifs often come from nature, the leaves, the flowers, breaking them down into simplistic shapes. So I hope that answered the question.
I would agree with you because perfection from the spiritual angle is quite different from perfection at the mental level. At the mental level, we tend to think in terms of certain rules, certain types of technical requirements. Unless they are absolutely perfectly met, we don't consider the product to be perfect. But from the spiritual angle, there are only two things that are important. One, the degree of harmony that you achieve, and secondly, the extent to which you acted as an unobstructed channel for a higher force that is working through you. So long as you remain open to that, even if the product is not technically perfect, it has another type of perfection to it, and that does not in any way diminish its beauty, because beauty doesn't necessarily lie in conforming to certain rules constructed at the mental level. Like, say, for example, a simple thing like symmetry. Symmetry may be a technical requirement, but then sometimes an asymmetrical piece of art can also be extremely harmonious and aesthetically pleasing.
Absolutely.
Arunima, if there are no more questions or observations, then maybe you can make your own observations and wind up the session.
Yes, of course. Suhani, thank you so much for sharing some of your knowledge with us. And I'm sure you have inspired the youth, the bright young mind, but of course, you can inspire us adults as well. I'm talking by personal experience, of course. You have inspired me today. And there were some very interesting aspects you shared, the circle of life and the concept from Buddhism. So, thank you so much for joining us today and wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. Thank you.
So, thank you all for joining the session today, and we can close the session with a moment of peaceful silence. Thank you. Namaste.